So today we are going to see about the fifth chakra. So the reason why I have kept this image is just again to recollect the three traditions that Caroline was saying to us. So you see like where the chakras are, and these are the sacraments. I hope you are even seeing my mouse. And this is the tree of life, Kabbalah tree of life. And today we are going to see the throat chakra. So when it is throat chakra, we see the sacrament is called confession, and we have two tree of life sephiroths, which is the Hest and the Gevura. So we'll know the importance, and we see how these three traditions combine together. What Caroline have said when these three traditions combine together, and how does these work? So just one second, my dear friends. So where is it? So what are the things that we are going to learn today is we'll see basically what are the consequences of fear, and what will happen if we have faith, because the faith is something that we have to surrender ourselves. And then we will see like how we have to balance between the head and the heart, and then there are of course questions for self-examination. And as usual, we go to the introduction, and we see that the fifth chakra is the one that we have to surrender ourselves, and we have to identify our own willpower, and we have to like learn to surrender. And from a spiritual perspective, our highest goal is the full release of our personal will into the hands of the divine, and that is what we have to see. Let us see what Jesus and Buddha also said in this regard. So, sorry, not what they have said. They have attained the mastery of the state of consciousness, which is the complete union with the divine will. So that's what. And where this location is, like every one of you know, or have seen in the previous picture, that the location is the throat. And then, yes, okay. And then we have an energy connection, and we'll see if it is an energy connection to the physical body, then it will be like throat, thyroid, trachea, esophagus, parathyroid, hypothalamus, neck, vertebrae, mouth, jaw, and teeth. And if it is emotional body, so the fifth chakra resonates to the numerous like emotional and mental struggles, so which is involved in learning the nature of power of choice. All illness has a connection to the fifth chakra. Once again, friends, all illness is having a connection to the fifth chakra. Why? Because choice is involved in every detail of our lives, and therefore in every illness. And what is the symbolic connection? So the symbolic challenge of the willpower chakra is to progress through the maturation of willpower. So like every one of you know, from the tribal perception that everyone and everything around us has authority over you, through the perception that we alone have authority over us, to the final perception that true authority comes from aligning ourselves to God's will. So this is what that we will be learning here. And so what will be the connection? As we have seen in the before picture, that there is a sephira and also a sacrament. Here the sephira is the one of the sephira is Hest, which is like, you know, you will always be in the loving state when you're following this one. And the next one is Gevura, which is judgment, means we have to be non-judgmental. That's what this says. And these two sephiroths are the right and left arms of God. So these portray also like the balanced nature of divine will. And then there is a sacrament called confession. So you see, like when it is balanced, then it is confession. And we are accountable the way we use our willpower. And divine is the merciful, and that only God has the right to judge the choices that we make. So this is what about the connection. And then fears is like, um, when fears are related to the willpower, so within the fears exist in each chakra. So we fear having, like, for example, no authority or no power of choice within our own lives, or first within our tribes and then within our own personal and professional relationships. And followed with, like, we fear also like having no authority on ourselves. So in a way that if we are out of control, that's where the fear comes. If we are out of control means then we are also having the fear of the will of God. So the notion of releasing our power of choice to a divine force remains the greatest struggle for the individual seeking to become more conscious. And the sacred truth, of course, faith, self-knowledge, and personal authority. So what choices we could make if we actually see their energy consequences. So the sacred truth is always like surrender personal will to divine will. And one's thoughts and attitudes also benefit from accepting higher guidance as well. And understanding, like, for example, the energy consequences of our thoughts and beliefs as well as our actions may force us to be may force us to become honest to a new degree. And also that we have to, as we have seen in the previous chakra, that um, we have to discipline ourselves, we have to commit ourselves also for healing. And healing requires also honesty with oneself here, and this is where it belongs here. Honesty and forgiveness retrieve our energy, our spirits from the energy dimension of the past. So our fifth chakra and its spiritual lessons shows us that personal power lies in our thoughts and attitudes. So we'll see the consequences of fear, friends. Um, the most costly or energy consequences come from acting out of fear. So even when choices made from fear lead us to what we desire, they generally also produce unwanted side effects. So these surprises that we choose, they transgresses the trust in the divine guidance. And we all do live, at least periodically, within the illusion that we are in charge of our lives. So we seek money and social status in order to have greater power of choice, and so that we do not have to follow the choices of others they make for us. And the idea that consciousness requires surrendering personal will to divine will stands in direct conflict with all that we have to consider the measure of an empowered person. So usually, when Caroline said, when we repeat the cycle of fear, surprise, and fear, surprise, so we all also have a prayer that we have to say that, you choose and I will follow, which means that when we are in this state, like the surrender, when we surrender ourselves to the God, like let's say our soul, so which means the divine interference or even our higher self will always be at its best. So that's what it is. So our higher self listen always to our needs. So this is what about like fear. I mean, Caroline, I also have mentioned few examples, my dear friends. Maybe you also have to read the book. It's so lovely. It's just a small examples like how we face the challenges. It's okay to be fearful, but how we are also committed to ourselves to overcome all such kind of incidents. That's what it is all about. And now we see about faith. So for example, faith here, it is the essence. It is the essence of the fifth chakra, and this is the one which directs us to the surrender. So our faith and our power of choice are in fact the power of creation itself, and we are the vessels through which energy becomes matter in this life. So usually when something happens, we'll keep on asking, like, why the things are happening, why this is happening to me, what is my purpose, or what does God want from me, what am I meant for, so and so. But when we surrender ourselves, we don't ask all these questions. We just go with the flow. Like, we only focus on our spiritual journey, because we also know that challenges will come in, and we know how to um, face them. And the challenge here is to discover, like, what motivates us to make choices, and whether we have faith in our fears or the divine. This is the one that every one of us have to ask ourselves, are we taking this choice either with fear or the divine? For example, it's just a small example. Am I doing the job with fear for the purpose of money, or is it like really required for me, that I really love to do this job? Just a small choices, also everyday choices, or even the small kind of food. Is the food really important today to eat? What kind of food shall I cook? Any kind of choice. If we start from the small things, then we will understand the power of the choices that we make also in the bigger things, and then we'll also trust ourselves, and that's where we make always the best choices. Whatever choice that we make, it will be the best. And the next thing is here, Carolyn have mentioned here, like, between the head and the heart, the main essence here is to balance. Because if one dominates the other, then the other loses its balance. That's what it is. And I don't know how many of you have read also the book Sitayanam. What is in English? I forgot the name. Mm-mm. You know, does anyone of you remember the name, friends? Maybe can anyone of you chat? Yes,
Is it
Vinesh.
untold? Is it untold
Yes,
stories of
Untold
Sita?
Story of Sita. Thank you so much. Yes, when Sita is in Lanka, there happened a war, and Rama is like fighting against Ravana, and then Lakshmana was about to die. So at that time, Sita Mata, energetically she went, and she again fights with um, fights with the god, and then she brings back the life to Lakshmana. See, what we also have to see is, like, we say always Rama and Sita, which means like oneness. So one is acting on the external side, and one is acting um, on the emotional side, or the internal side. So that's where even we have to see in our body as well. So what is in the head and the heart, and how we are balancing the head and heart. So we see always as characters, but when we see such kind of characters as an emotional entity in within our body, then we also realize the importance of each and every aspect that we do. So here the mental energy is external world, and heart energy is the personal problem. So here the Sita Mata is the heart energy, and Rama is the mental energy, let's say. So this is where we have to do. And how, sometimes we lose balance over the things. So if mind and heart are not communicating clearly with each other, then one will dominate with the other. So when our minds are in the lead, then we suffer emotionally, because we turn emotional data into an enemy, and vice versa. It's just the same. And when also the hearts are in the lead, we tend to maintain the illusion that all is well. Whether the mind is in the lead or the heart, will is motivated by fear and not by the sense of internal security. And this imbalance turns people into addicts, such as, for example, as if they are depressed, they tend to eat more. It's not just alcohol or the other addictions, even the smallest of the smallest things that we don't have the power to do any exercise, for example. So even these kind of small changes, and every behavior that is usually healthy, exercise or meditation, for instance, can be an addiction if it is used to avoid pain or the personal insight. And what Carolyn also mentioned here is the only way to break through this pattern is to make the choices that engage the united power of mind and heart. And how this will happen is to bring change in your process, change bring in the patterns. So when some change is happening, because every one of us, when we are comfortable somewhere to bring the change, we are most afraid. But when that change comes, there comes the balance, there comes the united power of the mind and heart. This is the simple technique that we have to follow, friends. And here Caroline have given a beautiful story. With this, I'm going to end the fifth chakra. So there was a guy called Job. So we'll see how he surrendered himself to the God. Job was a man of great faith and great wealth, and he prided himself on both. And then Satan asked God to be allowed to test Job, claiming that he could cause Job to lose his faith in God. And God agreed with Satan. So what the thing Satan first do is, um, Satan first caused Job to lose his possessions and his children. But Job remained faithful to God, believing that if this were God's will for him, so be it. Next, Job was given an illness, and his wife advised him to rebuke God for their increasing miseries. And Job remained faithful. But what happened then? Job's wife have passed away. Job was visited by his friends, Eliphaz, by his three friends, who offered their sympathy and debated the nature of divine justice. They believed that God would never punish a man, and that therefore Job must have done something to offend the God. And Job protested his innocence and said that his suffering was part of the universal experience of injustice. As Job grew to think that perhaps God was unjust after all, causing him to suffer, a young man named Elihu joined Job and his friends and castigated them for believing that they could know the mind of God and for feeling that God owed them an explanation for his choices. So what happened then is, like, God spoke to Job and instructed him on the difference between human will and divine will. So God asked Job, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? And also God asked, have you ever given orders to the morning? Or have you ever given orders to send the dawn to its post? Neither of that, right? So that's where Job realized challenging that's where Job realized how the challenges will be, how the challenges and how we have to overcome from those. And that's where he repented. So he informed his friends of the truth that he had learned, and that no mortal could ever know the mind of God, that the only true act of faith is to accept all that God asks for us, and that God owes no mortal an explanation for his decisions. Job then released his will into the hands of God, saying, I have spoken once, I'll not speak again. So God gave Job another family and doubled his earthly possessions. So again and again, the challenges that we face cause us to ask, what is God's will for me? What often think of God's will for us as a task, a job, a means of accumulating power for ourselves. But the thing is, but in truth, divine will always leads us primarily to learn about the nature of God. That's the biggest thing. And then the greatest act of will in which we can invest our spirits is to choose our life according to these rules. So make no judgments, have no expectations, give up the need to know why things happen as they do, and trust the unscheduled events of our lives. And these are a form of a spiritual children direction. And I don't know why I wrote children. So sorry friends. So trust that unscheduled events of our lives, and these will be a form of spiritual direction. Have the courage to make the choices we need to make, accept what we cannot change, and have the wisdom to know the difference. So this is all, my dear friends, and these are the questions that we have to ask to ourselves. So you can also see and write it down, maybe in the YouTube, this will be there, and try to write down as much as possible. And we'll see like how strong we are and how committed we are for our internal guidance, and how we are taking actions as well. So this is all for today, my dear friends.